As a part of our risk analysis and risk management, in this video we are going to learn about how to prioritize risks. Once you have understood what a risk is and identified the risks as a part of our software test planning module, we'll now move on to prioritizing the risk. So during the planning meeting, once the team is along, once we have identified the risks, the next step is to prioritize the risk. What do you mean by prioritize? Why do we need to prioritize? Let's have a look. List down a few risks that we discussed in the last meeting. So let us look at the risk. Let's say the risk was losing or servers crashing frequently. What is the frequency of this risk? How many times has this happened in the past? We need to identify that before considering this to be a real risk. There could be that the main developer goes on leave. The third could be that too many bugs in the software. Now, these risks are identified. Let's say the team identifies 3 risks. Now, which would be the most scariest of them? So if you look at it carefully, there are 2 product risks and 1 project risk. Could you tell me which one is a product risk and which one is a project risk? From our previous session, we understood that a product risk has anything to do with classify this risk. You have this as the product risk, this as the project risk, and this again as a product risk. Now, each risk comes with 2 major factors. The first factor with the risk is the impact of the risk. Now, what is the impact? What will be the impact of the risk when this risk becomes a reality? If the server keeps crashing frequently, if there is a risk, identified risk, what is the impact of it on the end users, on the customer, on the contract that you have? And what is the likelihood of it happening for your project? How often does this happen? When does this happen? Whom have you dealt with before? Has this ever happened in the last 3 months? What is the frequency of this happening? In order to prioritize, give it a score between 0 to 10. Talk to the team. Estimate that, okay, what if this happens frequently? The impact is high, of course, on a scale of 10, 9. If the server crashes, nothing happens. But what is the likelihood of it? How often has it happened in the past? Have we frequently seen this, or is it just once, which has happened in a year? So if it is happening frequently, then definitely your score is high. So I would say, okay, yeah, this is happening frequently. So this is a risk that we need to take care of. Talk about a project risk. How about people leaving on time? They go on a vacation uninformed. They don't have any plans. They just leave the company. The app's gone. You don't have any contracts with them. What happens then? Your project is left in the lurch. What do you do now? What is the impact of it? What is the dependency on the developer? Is the documentation done correctly or not? Now, when we consider all of this, you realize that this is a real problem. So what is the impact of if a main guy, if the lead developer or the main tester leaves the organization without informing? The impact is high, of course. And what is the likelihood of it happening? Have you spoken to the team? Have you understood their requirements? Have you heard them out? Have you done the appraisals on time? Have you done all of that? Have you taken care of it? Or not? If you know that your team is dependable for the next 6 months or a year for your project's duration, then your likelihood is less. So I would say, okay, for my project, it's not that bad either. Talk about too many bugs in the software. This is the product risk. What is the impact? Again, end users are complaining, the customers are complaining, everyone is complaining. So yes, the impact is again high. But what is the likelihood of it? Given that you have not done any testing, you don't test the software, you don't do anything. What do you expect? Of course, that the chances of this happening is also high. Now all you have to do is multiply these 2. 1 into this. Now if you see carefully, there are 3 sets of values. These values represent the overall score of the risk. So if you see carefully, having many bugs in the software has the highest score. This becomes my number 1 risk to my project. This becomes the most important risk to my project. So what I do is, I do all the steps in which I can try to minimize the impact of this risk, or I can plan for the contingency of this risk. The next risk that we look at is the servers crashing. So we are looking at a very high likelihood and a very high impact of servers crashing. So we cannot afford that kind of a risk to keep open, we need to close onto this risk. We need to discuss with the team and make sure that this risk is thwarted out of the system or mitigated so that we are not in a problematic situation. And the last one can definitely be considered, because we have already discussed with the team, there is still scope. Our minimum threshold could be 10 or 12, but still this is at 28. How can we reduce can we see of reducing the impact or reducing the likelihood, and see if this risk can be mitigated so that you are in a safe zone and you can focus on the project deliverables to the best that you can. So in the upcoming video, we are going to look at how risks can be resolved. What is the risk resolution? So we looked at identification, understanding what a risk is, what are the different types of risks, how to identify the risk, and how to prioritize the risk. So these are top 4 activities that you do. The next step is resolution, which is the final step, where you will identify a resolution and keep it for your plan, so that when your plan starts executing, and if any risk becomes a reality, you have taken care of it already. Thank you so much.